Hello and welcome to the Clarion Chats podcast, the podcast where we talk about previous and upcoming events. I'm your host, Harley, and I'm here with my co-host, Josh.
Hello.
And so this is Josh's last podcast because he's graduating. Sad.
Yep.
So I'm gonna have to find a new co-host for the summer, fall, and spring as we continue on with Clarion Chats. But this week was the last week for the spring semester for Sinclair. The graduation was on Thursday, May 6th, where we learned this was the biggest graduating class for Sinclair. It was the most decorated class for Sinclair. The youngest person graduating was only 15. The oldest was in their 80s. We also rewarded some of our first bachelor's degrees.
I heard about that. I didn't know which ones they were, though.
There was only 4 of them that were awarded. They went to the 4 p.m. graduation because they had 2. They split us into a 10 a.m. and a 4 p.m. Each graduation lasted approximately 40 minutes. But these bachelor's degrees, what's really cool about this, it's not just the first bachelor's degrees for Sinclair. They told us at the ceremony, because I went to the 10 a.m. one, they said that these were the first bachelor degrees given out by a community college in Ohio. So Sinclair is now the first community college in Ohio to give out bachelor degrees, which is pretty historic.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, are you excited to graduate? Are you do you have any plans for the future? Or
I am moving on, since I can't grab my bachelor degree, English major here. I'm moving over to Wright State. And I'm kind of excited, but at the same time, this graduation just feels like kind of like another step. It's like, okay, I've still got more to do.
Yeah, so Wright State. So what are you going for? What is your degree exactly?
English. And while I'm there, I might eventually come back to Sinclair and grab journalism or possibly history, but I want to get the English out of the way first. Using that, I'm probably going to work just smaller type editing jobs, preferably something in journalism. Yeah.
That's really cool. Yeah, I'm a journalism degree currently. So I graduated with my associates in multimedia journalism. And then I also graduated with a certificate in new media. But I'll be heading back to Sinclair in the fall to get a certificate in digital marketing. And kind of like layer those all on top because I'm kind of looking at the social media aspect of journalism. So I think digital marketing will definitely help. That's why I'm gonna be staying at the Clarion because I'm going to continue my education at Sinclair in the fall, just going for another certificate.
But congrats, grad. You're technically a graduate too.
Yeah, technically I am. That's true. Well, we're gonna move on to just some sports news real quick. The Olympics are coming up this summer. They are getting closer and closer. I know a lot of the qualifiers are finishing up for, like who's gonna make it into Olympics.
Yeah, this is can I just say it? I feel like this Olympics is going to be a disaster. Oh God! Just because of the pandemic, this feels like it's going to be a disaster.
Yeah, it's definitely gonna be interesting to see how they adapt to all the changes. Like they've already stated that in something that we've talked in a past podcast, how the only people in the arenas are going to be the teams, the coach, and the judges. There's going to be no spectators, like no one's allowed to go and like watch. You have to watch it mainly strictly on your TV or you can stream it online. It should be interesting, but I agree. It might end up being a dumpster fire. So in entertainment news, the final season of Keeping Up With The Kardashians is coming to a close. After 20 seasons, the family has
It's
decided to cut
dead.
quits.
It's finally dead.
It's finally coming to a close after 20 years of keeping up with the family. They decided to, call it quits. Well, moving on from the Kardashians, we're going to move on to American Horror Story, The Contest. So just a quick recap. We have talked in past episodes that American Horror Story is letting you vote on the plot line, the theme, the storyline for the next season. It's going to be called Double Feature. There was 4 in the running: Aliens, Plague, Sirens, and Bloody Mary. It got down to 2, Sirens and Bloody Mary. Ryan Murphy took to Instagram to post that Sirens was the winner. But I know on the Clarion, some of us were rooting for Bloody Mary.
It so was.
Josh, I want you to take a second and get to tell us the story of Bloody Mary and why you were like so excited for that plot line.
Okay, so when people refer to Bloody Mary, the Mary they're referring to was the Queen of England. People often remember her father, Henry VIII, who split the church. He made the Anglican Church separated from Catholicism. Mary was devoutly Catholic, so once he died, she switched it back. She was back, and she was brutal in her attempts to do this because her father had been brutal in his attempts to change the country to Anglican. She was in a loveless marriage with the King of Spain, who just essentially abandoned her and then abandoned her. She basically, this woman lived a very sad life and has been vilified throughout quite a bit of history for it. When in retrospect, she didn't behave nearly as badly as her father or as her sister, who is Queen Elizabeth, who followed right after her and reverted the country to or its more Protestant leanings. Elizabeth was just as brutal, but she had this kind of veneer of friendliness and charm that Mary just didn't have. So yeah, it's a very not talked about part of history. It's a very interesting one. So yeah. Saying it now, it already sounds like a horror story or an unwanted daughter.
Yeah, and I would love to see how Ryan Murphy would have had that season play out, especially because each season American Horror Story, for a lot of people who don't know, each season has some truth to it. There's some actual history to it. And I would love to have seen how he would have, incorporated that into that season. And I know we talked about in a past episode of this podcast series how we've never really seen anything circle around Bloody Mary. I
mean, there's the horror stories and things like that. There's one movie, but it's about Elizabeth, and they don't really get her right. But yeah, she kind of just gets glossed over between all the wife killing and church splitting her father did, and all the kind of reforms and colonization her sister did. She just kind of gets speed bumped over, except for all the Protestant killings. Yeah. That's about all it. That's why she's Bloody Mary.
Well, do you know why? Because when I was a kid, I remember people were like, well, if you go to the bathroom and you say Bloody Mary 3 times, she'll appear. When did that come about?
I do not know, but I am Googling it right now. Yeah, I can't figure out why it's actually Bloody Mary. I've Googled and found wikis on why people think things happen when you say Bloody Mary and et cetera, but I can't figure out why Bloody Mary exactly was chosen.
Yeah.
And it's not even the same Bloody Mary.
Oh, that's a
different Bloody Mary.
What?
Yep.
Who?
Mary Wolfe.
Oh.
It's believed to be a witch who was burned for practicing magic. Some modern iterations believe she is a young woman who died in a car accident. And some specific specific lines need to be uttered. So who knows what Bloody Mary we would have gotten.
Lastly, in our news here, so on Wednesday, April 28th, Biden had his joint session of Congress where he addressed a joint session of Congress. And he also addressed the nation, talking about what they accomplished in the first 100 days. And then he went on to make approximately 60 promises on what he wishes to accomplish throughout the rest of his term. And the Biden administration is already making progress towards some of those promises, which is actually pretty great. I know he has a 53.5% approval rating currently, as of today. And he's making strides they did the minimum wage thing, $15 minimum wage. It started just for federal people, I do believe. And they're getting ready to make it nationwide.
Mm-hmm.
They're also looking at improving the education system. They're also looking at student loan. And
Please.
Yeah, that's the big one on the table is student loan forgiveness and what they're going to do there. He also announced that they are making strides on writing a new tax law where it would tax more heavily on people who are in the top 0.1% of our country, the really rich. So they're working on that and a bootload of other things, which is really impressive. And it's really cool that his administration is just, they're not just talking the talk, they're walking the walk, and they're actually making waves of impact and change in this country, which is pretty impactful and great. And I love to see it.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how quite a bit of this plays out, because for basically anything Biden wants to do currently, he needs to have unilateral support of the Senate, of the Democrats in the Senate to get it done, so that Kamala can come in with her one vote, tip the scales, and get it on his desk. And you mentioned a number of different policies, and the thing is, for quite a few of them, they don't have that unilateral support among Democrats, because some argue that some of these things should be harsher, some argue that they should be set lower, like that 0.001%. And there's an argument on how much they should be taxed. I can't quite remember the numbers myself. I believe Biden has it 36, but Democrats are saying some Democrats are saying that's too much, peel it back to 30. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out within the Democratic Party. And meanwhile, Mitch McConnell has pledged to stop anything the government attempts to do, because he can't. I mean, he can't. He's technically, but because he's Mitch McConnell, and attempting to stop things is what he does.
And all this stuff, and like you said, a lot of it is going to require for both Democrats and Republicans to come to some type of compromise or agreement, and that's easier said than done. So it should be interesting to see how many of these promises that were made during this joint address to Congress, how many of these promises are going to be fulfilled.
I believe they can get it done, But to get some of the fringe Democrats in the Senate to agree to it, they might have to peel back. So it might not be as satisfying it'll be as Biden hopes or as many people might hope.
Yeah. But in the same time, in some things, a little progress is better than none. So if there's like, oh, we peel it back to whatever now and we work towards this other goal in the future, well, you're still making some progress. You know, it's not the progress that we wished for and hoped for, but it's still something. Okay, well, moving on to articles you might have missed this past week. So that is what you might have missed this past week. Like we said, this is the last week for the spring semester. So this is the last podcast for the spring semester, and this is Josh's last podcast ever. I don't know what I'm going to do without Josh. It's sad.
Yeah, it is.
It's bittersweet.
Oh, you're going to have to find someone with the same amount of energy.
However, will I find someone to match your energy, Josh? Your fun facts. I don't think I can find anyone who has the same random fun facts as you do. I don't
know. Yeah. No. You're in the hole. No. Yeah, we can just end the podcast now. You're done for.
Just cancel it. You know, after one season, it's been great.
We're pulling a Watchmen, everybody. Some great television, but don't know where we go from here.
I don't know. This is the last episode for spring. I hope you enjoy this podcast episode. Make sure to like, subscribe, share with a friend. Our social media will be linked in the description below. And see you in the summer. Bye.
Bye.